Hi, everybody. This is Betsy Wurzel, host of Chatting with Betsy on Passion World Talk Radio. Jeannie White is the producer and writes the blog, so please read the blog. I am so excited tonight because I am starting a series on being an advocate. And people might think, well, I can't be an advocate. I'm a caregiver. I'm too tired. I can't speak up. Yes, you can. And that's what this series is about. Even as a caregiver, you are being an advocate when you speak up for your loved one, which is very, very important to do. And I'm going to shine the spotlight on individuals who have become an advocate because they had to as a caregiver. Now, there's different types of being an advocate, okay? There is a person who advocates for other people. There are groups who do advocacy. You could be an advocate for yourself and for your loved one. And I have with me tonight my sister, kindred spirit, who is a very strong advocate for her mom. I had the wonderful Colleen Fisher on. Welcome, Colleen. So happy to have you on.
Thank you, Betsy. I'm happy to be here. I don't know what I had to me on my mind.
Colleen, I know that you, but people may not know, you have two wonderful groups. We're going to start with that. You created the Alzheimer's and Dementia Supporting Education Hub. That's your public one. Public, right? That's one. Yes. And then you have your... Yeah, and you have your Alzheimer's and Dementia Education Hub, which is private. So you do your advocacy in those two groups, but you're also an advocate for your mom. And I so admire you. Can you tell us about how you became an advocate and why?
Well, when my mom was diagnosed in 2015 with Alzheimer's at the age of 73. Her husband had passed away in 2015, about 3 months before her diagnosis. Her landlord didn't think that she was going to be able to continue paying the rent without his income and with him being deceased, so they were going to evict her. They had become really good neighbors, or really good friends with their upstairs neighbors, and they decided that they weren't going to let her be evicted. They were going to, take her in. And over the course of the following 3 months, they went and moved into a bigger place, and this way they would have enough room for themselves, their grandchildren, and my mom. And the first 3 months after they moved, they noticed that she seemed, pretty disoriented and confused, and that's when they knew that there was something wrong. And because she was under their full-time care, they were the ones that had the permission to verbally speak with her clinic. They're the ones who, took her in, and that's when she got the diagnosis. So for the first 2 years, she continued to live with her friends. They had won over my trust, and I had believed that everything was going, smoothly. I had, no reason to doubt anything that they were telling me. I had no reason to mistrust them. And in 2017, my mom's Social Security was completely stopped, 100%, because they claimed that she had an overpayment. As a result, the electric bill at, my mom's place wasn't getting paid, and they thought it would be too dangerous for her to be there, at night in the dark, so I began to keep my mom with me. I would go to work, I worked part-time. I was working, 2, 3, 4-hour shifts, so I would drop my mom off over there, during the day. I would work my 3, 4 hours and then pick her up after work and bring her back home with me. Well, from that point on, she never actually spent another night over there. And in August, that was in June, and in August I officially went and got all of her stuff and, like, moved her in with me. And I don't know, like, how I managed to do it, but it was, like, by the grace of God, I was actually able to get the main contact number at her clinic changed from the people she used to live with to my number, because I felt like if she had any doctor's appointments coming up or anything like that, I needed to know about it so I could get her there. Well, as a result, my advocacy, this is where, like, my advocacy first started. In September of 2017, I got a phone call from the clinic. They told me that my mom had a prescription for Percocet that could be picked up anytime after 8 a.m., and I had ended up asking them right then and there how it was that she was able to get this prescription for Percocet, because according to what her friends told me, they told me that she had been taken off that drug like a year prior, because they said it wasn't really helping her and it was causing her to sleep too much. And a friend of mine says, you need to call the clinic back and find out how that prescription came about. So I ended up doing that at like 1 o'clock the following afternoon. I hadn't slept well the night before. And I ended up asking the clinic, wait a minute, according to what I was told, my mom's been taking off this medication. Is there any way that, you can tell me how it was this prescription came about? And come to find out, her former friends and caregivers, the doctor had never stopped the medication. They continued to get the refills, but they kept the pills for themselves, or they were selling some. They kept some of them and were selling some of them. So they weren't giving them to my mom. They asked me if I had the pills, if I had them in my possession, and if they were with the patient, and I said absolutely not. And then that's when the police got involved, and that's when all of my advocating really started, because I had to go up against her former caregivers. I had to speak up against the judge. I had to speak up with her attorney and the hospital, and it's been a real game.
It's a struggle. Caregivers have a lot to do in taking care of their loved one, and yet we have to battle doctors, sometimes, going to a judge, going to the hospital, fighting doctors, fighting nurses, and it shouldn't have to be that way, folks, but unfortunately it is. Colleen, it's a good thing you had the ability within yourself to stand up for your mom, because if you didn't stand up for your mom, she would not have had the care that you're still given to her. Tell the people, because I know the story, that your mom was supposed to go to court and how you had to fight the courts about that.
Okay. So what happened after the whole Percocet ordeal, once the police became involved, I actually had to work with the police in an attempt to gain the pills back from Pam. And so the clinic told me that I needed to call her and tell her that the clinic wanted a pill count. So she ended up bringing part of the prescription over to me. About 9 o'clock that night, I called down to the police department, and I asked the officers to come over and do a pill count for me, because I didn't want there to be any kind of misrepresentation at my mom's doctor appointment the following day. So when we all get to the doctor's appointment, there's a police officer waiting there. Pam was there. She wasn't allowed to come into the room with us. And the whole time I was in the room with my mom's doctor and the nurse and the police officer, I had the police officer standing there grilling me, telling me, well, I must not have known her that well if I didn't know, what kind of medications that Pam was on and this, that, and the other thing. I said, I've had people that I've known my entire life, and I don't know all of their medical conditions. It's not my business. And I ended up telling the officer, I said, while you're standing in here grilling me, you're giving her an a perfect opportunity to get away. I said, you being in here is probably, intimidating to my mom, who obviously has dementia. So I had to speak up on that part. And, of course, Pam took off, and it took them a couple of days to catch up with her. I had to be the one to tell them, where she was staying and that kind of thing. So all of this comes to light, and then I find out that I got lied to about her medical power of attorney. So I had to go to her clinic, and I had to advocate for her in order to get the medical power of attorney, because her former caregivers told me they had medical power of attorney. It just hadn't been activated yet, blah, blah, blah. But nobody at that point had financial power of attorney. So I, went in to get the power of attorney established, and they had said that they had no such records on file, that nobody was listed as a medical power of attorney, and if I'd have waited any longer, she would have been too incompetent to choose one for herself. I had to straighten everything out with the Social Security office in order to get her Social Security going again. Then I found out that she was, I found out what her list of medications were. There's not a doubt in my mind that if I hadn't taken my mom in when I did, she would be dead and gone today. I found out that she was left a year and a half untreated for hypothyroidism, and her sodium levels had dropped down to 127. 120 and below, you're looking at thyroid-induced coma. So I found out that her former caregiver knew that she was supposed to be on this medication for her thyroid. A prescription had been called in for it, but the medication had never been picked up and had never been given to her. So
that's, wow. This is why people have to be on top of everything so that people do not get taken advantage of.
Yes, exactly. And then, through all this process, I discovered that my mom had a second account where she was getting a widow's pension benefit from when my stepfather passed, because he was military. So she was getting a widow's military benefit every month into an account that I knew nothing about. Adult Protective Services actually discovered the account and asked me if I knew anything about it, which I did not. So come to find out that even though my mom's Social Security got cut off, she was still receiving this other money, and her former caregivers were withdrawing the money every month and keeping it. So we ended up having to go to court over the whole Percocet ordeal, and the judge wanted my mom to go to court and sit through, I think this was during the lawsuit part of it. During the Percocet part of it, I ended up going to court on her behalf, and I told the judge, I told the judge what she's done compared to with what she was charged, because the DA refused to press elder neglect charges for the not giving her the life-sustaining medication, stealing her money, that kind of thing. He refused to press any further charges. And she could have faced up to a year in jail on just the Percocet charge alone. And I told the judge, I said, what she has done compared to what she is charged with, if she does not get any jail time out of this, justice will not have been served in your courtroom. And I continued to explain some of the other things that she'd done. I said she needs jail time. Well, I ended up speaking up to the judge about that, and the end result was all she got was $579 in restitution. She didn't pay the full restitution, so she ended up sitting in jail for 2 days. Then her attorney, aside from that, we had to get her former caregiver taken off of her life insurance policy. Somehow she'd gotten herself named as an irrevocable beneficiary, meaning either she had to agree to be taken off or we had to have her court ordered to be taken off. So I had to go through this whole year-long ordeal with Mutual of Omaha and the Elder Rights Project, which is the firm that represented my mom, because they kind of go like on income base. And I had to go through this whole ordeal with, like I said, Mutual of Omaha to get Pam removed as the irrevocable beneficiary. Before choosing a new one, my mom's attorney wanted me to take my mom to a notary republic and have her choose a new beneficiary in front of a notary republic to make sure that all of our bases were covered. I told her attorney, I said, my mom has dementia. There is no way she is mentally competent enough to sit before a notary republic to choose another beneficiary. And I said, I'm just gonna cash out the policy and give her the money. I said, because there's no way that she's competent enough. She would continue to look to me for answers, and she would ask me, what should I do? What should I do? What should I do? And no notary republic's going to sign off on that. So I had to actually speak up to her attorney about that. Then we had ended up filing a lawsuit, like a civil suit, against Pam for the stolen funds. And the judge tried to court order my mom to 5 hours of court-ordered mediation between her and Pam. And I told her attorney, I said, you go back and you tell that judge, I don't care what the consequences are. My mom has Alzheimer's. There is no way she's going to sit through 5 hours of court-ordered mediation or even comprehend half of what you guys are saying. I said, you tell the judge, I don't care what the consequences are to me. She will not be there. I will not expose her, not one single second, not one single minute of one single day to that woman ever again.
You were a very strong advocate. And the result was your mom didn't sit in on the court.
Absolutely not. And then Pam actually ended up missing a few court appearances, and the judge wasn't very happy with her. And in the end, we were awarded a $15,000 judgment against Pam for the stolen fund, and I believe it was punitive damages. So we got a $15,000 judgment against her, which we can't collect on because she gets Social Security disability.
Wow, that's a lot to have to advocate for. Colleen, did you think that you would ever step into this role? Like, did you think you were strong enough to do it? Or did you just say, I'm going to take the bull by the horns and I'm going to just do what I have to do?
Oh, I think it was a kind of a combination of both. I was ready to take caregiving by the balls on one hand, and on the other hand, I was absolutely terrified. Because I knew so little about dementia back then.
And you did it anyway. Bravo to you.
Mm-hmm.
I shudder to think how many people, just like your mom, who have nobody to speak up for them, being taken advantage of like that, getting money stolen from them, drugs stolen from them, and elder abuse. That's frightening, really, to think about. So kudos to you for stepping up and doing that. What can you tell the listeners about being an advocate? People think, I can't do that because I'm not as strong. It takes a strong person. Do you think being strong has anything to do with it, or do you just find that you just have to do it? Like, it's just you have to fight for your mom?
It's absolutely not. It has nothing to do with strength. It can be the most terrifying thing in the world to actually find your voice and use it. It can be the most difficult thing ever to speak up and defend your loved one, but it's not a matter of being strong enough to do it. It's a matter of having to do it. You have to do it because they're not mentally competent to do it for themselves. They don't have their own voice. You have to be their voice. You have to speak up for them. You have to defend them. It's not a matter of being strong enough. It's not a matter of being scared. It's a matter of no choice. No choice.
Exactly.
Because if you don't speak up for it and you're not following through with your responsibilities as a caregiver, you got no business being in the role of caregiver. You need to pass the torch on to somebody who can handle
it. Bravo. Exactly right, Colleen. Caregivers need to, and we say this all the time, educate yourself, know about your loved one's dementia so you can speak up to doctors, police officers, judges, whoever you need to talk to. But you have to come before them knowing your information. And I think you are a wonderful advocate for your mom. You're a great role model. And how did you start your 2 dementia groups, Alzheimer's dementia support groups? What made you start that, and how did you start it?
I wanted to find a way. The biggest complaint that I had seen from caregivers is that other people who are not caregivers just don't understand. They don't understand dementia. They don't understand how difficult it is. They don't understand what we deal with on a daily basis, and they just don't get it. I wanted to find a way to educate the general public, those who don't care for dementia patients, on a widespread basis. And I thought, I actually started chatting with Jeff Ginther on Facebook, through Facebook chat, and we were trying to discuss ways that we could raise awareness and bring education to people. And that's when we got it in mind to create Alzheimer's /dementia support and education hub. It actually started off as a public group, but we ended up with so many caregivers that were concerned about friends and family seeing their posts, their rants, their vents, that type of thing. And we had so many people asking us to close the group that we just went ahead and closed the group and made it just kind of a safe space for the caregivers. But there are so many closed groups on Facebook as it is, specifically for caregivers, that it kind of defeated the purpose of educating the public as a whole. I feel like you have to have a public platform. You can't be afraid to speak up to your friends, speak up to your family, and say, hey, if you think you can do better than me, then go on ahead and do it. Otherwise, step back and shut up. You have to find your voice. You have to find your voice. Right. You can't let people bully you and push you around. If they don't like something you got to say, well, then you can hop off. This is my attitude. If you don't like something I got to say, then you can hop off as quick as you hopped on, because you're not the one here doing it. And the only way the public is going to get educated, the only way the public is going to finally understand something they don't deal with it, is if there is a public group where caregivers are venting. They have to see it through the eyes of the caregiver. That means when your loved one is hiding a dirty Depends under their bedroom pillow, you need to get into a public group and post about that. And if it shows up on your friends and family's timeline and they don't like it, well, that's their problem, not yours. How else is anybody going to understand? You can't complain. You cannot gripe and complain that people don't get it and then continue to hide in the shadows of closed groups. That's where the public group was born.
Excellent. That's so true, Colleen. And I know that we've been friends for a while, and I belong to both your groups. You belong to my group. And I love how you stick to your guns. I love how you post about your mom, even on your own, your own personal page. And you've taken flack for it. And I admire that you are showing the reality of this disease, and people have to see the reality of this disease. They need to see what goes on. I call it the good, the bad, and the ugly of Alzheimer's or whatever dementia your loved one has. And
Exactly.
This is where, right? Go ahead. Go ahead.
As much as people want to pretend it's all sunshines and rainbows, that's not reality.
Right. Right. And, you know, as a caregiver, you might take flack from your friends, your family, but this is where you need to be an advocate, listeners. You need to say, you know what? This is how reality is. I'm going to speak up. You don't like it? That's too bad. It's too bad if you're offended. People who are advocates do offend people. You know what? They'll get over it. And if they don't, well, that's too bad. I love the fact that you speak your truth. Folks, Colleen Fisher is a role model. I'm telling you. Go on her page and see how she posts about her mom. I had the utmost respect and admiration for you, Colleen. I know that you even had to fight for your mom when she was in the hospital, and that's very important, folks. You need to be with your loved one. I mean, I know you can't now because of the pandemic. I'm not talking about now during the pandemic. I'm talking about during, well, so-called normal times, that you have to be an advocate. You need that power of attorney, medical, and financial. Tell about your mom's hospital experience, that you had to fight for your mom about the medication. They gave her something without telling you about it.
Oh, yes. In 2018, I believe it was, my mom started having, like, passing out spells and falls. She had 15 falls and near falls in that 1 year. If I hadn't been there with my arms wrapped around her for all but maybe 3 of them, she would have had some pretty bad falls. I was actually able to get her lowered safely to the ground. I had to have an ambulance come and take her in. She'd get discharged. Finally, on the 3rd or 4th one, she'd get admitted. And then one day, they couldn't figure out what was going on. And then one day, she woke up in the morning. We had just gotten like several inches of snow the night before. My driveway was just super packed with snow, and I couldn't get my car out. I still had to go out and shovel, dig my car out. And I go into my mom's room to say good morning, and we used to sing, like in the mornings we used to sing "You Are My Sunshine" to each other. And I go in there, and she's got tears going down, like kind of streaming down her cheek. And I asked her what was wrong, and she says, I got chest pain. And so she ended up being, they told me I needed to get her up to the emergency room. So I told them, I said, well, it's probably going to be a little bit before I can get her there because I still have to dig my car out. And they said that was fine. And I went out and shoveled, got her up there. She got admitted. And they discovered that she had some, they had the cardiologist come in, and she'd already had a previous heart attack. She'd already had some old damage done to her heart, so she had heart failure from that. And during that time, they had discovered some new damage to her heart. Well, after she got discharged from the hospital, she continued to experience some falls. They had put her on a medication called Zocor, which is to lower your cholesterol. And they told me I needed to keep her on that medication. Well, I didn't even know that they were putting her on the medication. I knew nothing about the medication. I didn't even have a chance to look into the medication interactions with her other meds, side effects, that kind of thing. They just started her on it and then told me about it after the fact, the day, not even like the day she was discharged is when I found out. And when we got home, I did some digging around, and I looked into the medication Zocor, and it said that especially in women over the age of 65, it can cause memory loss and confusion with Alzheimer's. I'm like, Lord knows she don't need any more of that. She's small, has a small frame, small structure, so that's also a weighing factor on the side effects. But it could cause permanent muscle damage and permanent weakness. I called her doctor immediately and said, I am taking her off of this. I said, I didn't even know they were starting her on it. And then there was a second time when she continued to have the falls. Most of the falls and stuff started after she started on the Zocor. Well, I couldn't find out it was low blood pressure causing it. But when she got admitted a second time for the falls and they were trying to figure it out, she got sent to St. Elizabeth's nursing home in the town where we live in for rehabilitation. And the same night that she got sent there, I stayed with her until it was her bedtime. They came in with her night med, and I noticed that she was missing her Seroquel. And I asked them, why isn't she getting this medication? And apparently the doctor decided to take her off the medication. She'd been on it for a year and a half. The doctor decided to take her off of it because she suspected that's what was causing my mom's fall. And I said, absolutely not. No way, this isn't going to fly. She's been on the medication for a year and a half. If that was the reason for her falls, we would have been noticing some indication of this a year and a half ago. And I called her neurologist and had her put back on. But both times I ended up having to call the hospital management and say, hey, look, you guys keep starting and stopping medications, and you're not talking to me about it, and you guys are completely ignoring my active medical power of attorney. She is not in a position where she can make those decisions for herself. I need to know what medications you want to start her on, what medications you want to stop, and I need an opportunity to consult with her primary care physician who knows her history. So I ended up actually having to call and chew out hospital management.
And this is why, folks, this is exactly why you will hear me, you will hear my guest talk about being an advocate. It is imperative to be an advocate for your loved one and be educated on your loved one's medications. It's very easy. You could Google it. There's information highway, internet, their dementia. It's very important that you as a caregiver stay informed of your loved one's health. And, you know, doctors aren't always right. And if you have the instinct that says something's not right, then it most likely is not right. You need to speak up and don't be afraid. A lot of people are afraid to speak up because they think the doctor is, you know, God, and that's not the case. You have to speak up. You can't turn a blind eye when it comes to your loved one's health or your own, and you can't look away at a injustice. Thank you, Colleen, for coming on. Well, what advice would you give a caregiver or anyone else about being an advocate?
Get involved and stay informed and speak up when something's not right. Because if you don't, nobody will.
Absolutely.
I ended up telling the hospital management because they told me, they said, ma'am, you don't need to yell at me. I said, you think I'm yelling now? I said, if anything happens to my mom as a result of your guys switching up her medications, you will hear my voice and you will remember it from 3 states away. My advice is speak up, use your mouth, use your voice, stop getting hurt, stop being afraid, and start getting mad. Because there is nobody out there doing it but you. They have nobody but you. Get mad and then redirect that anger in a positive way. Use it to fight for your loved one, whether it's against friends, families, doctors, nurses, lawyers, judges, police officers. It don't matter who you're coming up head-to-head with. Get mad and use it for something positive.
Absolutely right. I agree 100%. Excuse me. That's how I became an advocate. I was mad. I wasn't courageous. I was mad, and I had to use it for positive. So I want to thank you again, Colleen, so much for coming on, sharing your story about being an advocate. And how can people get in touch with you?
They can get in touch with me through either one of my groups, Alzheimer's /Dementia Support and Education Hub, and the same thing for the public group, but with public at the end. Or they can contact me through my regular Facebook if they type in Colleen Fisher or Colleen Sellers, because I use my maiden name on Facebook. So if they type in Colleen Sellers, I should be like the first one to pop up on the little blonde chick with the face in the picture.
Oh, thank you. Folks, I want to encourage you to join Colleen's both groups. I encourage people in my group to join other groups. The more education, the better. I'm administrator in Colleen's groups. Colleen's a member of my group, #Kick Alzheimer's Ass Movement. We support each other. It's all about education and helping the caregiver, and to inspire caregivers to stand up and be advocates, because, yes, you can do it. Yes, you can. You have to say to yourself, I can do this. And even though you're afraid, do it anyway. That's what we had to do. We had to face our fears and go right through the fire, so to speak. Right, Colleen?
Absolutely.
And we came out carrying buckets of water. You will come out stronger, trust me, when you do what you have to do. You think you don't have it in you. You do have it in you, caregiver. And if you're not a caregiver now, I really suggest you listen to this, because one day you might find yourself being a caregiver. And if you missed any of this audio cast, you can catch it on Spotify, Spreaker, iHeart, Apple Podcast. It is free to subscribe to Chatting with Betsy, and that way you won't miss any of my shows. Colleen's the first speaker in the series of advocacy. I'm going to have Sue Fernandez on next, and that should be very interesting. And I will do my talk about advocacy, and Marcia Burr will be speaking. And I'm looking forward to this exciting series. We need to hear from people who are going through this, who have experienced this, and this is how we learn. I wished there was Colleen Fisher speaking up 20 years ago. I wish there was people speaking up and helping me to navigate the dementia waters. So we are veteran caregivers. Colleen is seasoned caregiver. I'm not caregiving anymore for a loved one with dementia, but I have. And we want to help you navigate these waters so you don't drown. And there's a lot to navigate. So become educated and stay safe, everybody. And thank you for listening. I want to thank Jeannie White for producing, running the blog. Please read the blog. Please share it. A lot of information on there. And I want to thank Lillian Caldwell, CEO of Passion World Talk Radio, who started this radio station 15 years ago, who gave people a voice. And thank you. Okay, till I chat again, I'll see, or you'll hear from me. You won't see me, you'll hear from me. Bye-bye now.